that is exactly what happened in this case, but not just one. The prosecution in this case engaged in a pattern of 67, 66%, nearly 70% of their strikes of removing people who could be on the jury were people who were African American, while the defense engaged in removed only like 20%. So there weren't that many people African American available to sit on the jury in the first place, and yet the prosecution struck nearly every one of them. Not all, but nearly every one. And as I said, the court said only one is enough if one person is removed because of his or her race. And certainly there was just a pattern in this case and in other cases by that office of removing people because of their race.
And of course, Philadelphia, back then as now, had about a 45% African-American population, right?
Yes, that's true, but a far less percentage wound up being eligible to be selected, what we call in the jury venire on the panel. And there's no question of the racism being at work in this case. What's interesting about this decision yesterday, and Judge Ambrose raised this question twice in his 41-page dissent, and that is, why is this case being treated differently from other cases? Why is the majority, the other two judges, treating this case differently? It's what we often think of as the Mumia exception, and that is the law is one thing for everyone else, but the courts seem to strive to carve out an exception for Mumia Abu-Jamal. Because obviously he's outspoken, he's very critical of the establishment, and I might say that the big issue lingering over all of this is that he is absolutely not guilty of murder.
Robert Bryan, again, to clarify, because I don't think any of these articles made clear, this three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit ruled that Mumia Abu-Jamal must be sentenced to life in prison for killing Daniel Faulkner, or get a chance with a new Philadelphia jury that would decide only whether he should be sentenced to life or get the death penalty. Is that right? And who makes this decision?
That's exactly right. And the three judges were at least unanimous on this. And as I said, this is the good side of the decision. And Mumia and I talked yesterday twice, and I broke it to him about this decision during our first conference. And we both recognized, he recognized that this was a real victory, that at least we won on the death penalty, because it not only affects him, but certainly would help other people sitting on death rows. And what the court found was that the death penalty as applied in this case, back at the 1982 trial, by a very bigoted, very racist judge, was not applied properly, that it violated very clear standards of the U.S. Constitution, and the court said that my client is entitled to a new trial on the question of the death penalty in this case. So that was a win. I mean, it's not what we wanted, but it's a giant step.
But still, just to understand, he either could be sentenced to life in prison, or a sentencing jury would decide whether he gets life or the death penalty. Who decides
that's
whether
exactly right.
There's a sentencing jury or whether he's sentenced to life in prison?
That's decided by the jury, unless the district attorney's office hollered uncle, threw in the towel, and said, well, we're not going to re-prosecute this case. Then automatically the sentence, the re-sentence would be jury would not be necessary, would be less than death. It would be life. But assuming the prosecution continues with its zeal to try to snuff the life out of my client, we would go before a new jury of 12 men and women in Philadelphia, and that jury would decide whether it should be life or death. And I can assure you that even though the issue, if that's what we had to do, even though the issue would be penalty, we are entitled to bring in evidence of innocence, that he's not guilty of murder.
Again, just for our listeners and viewers to be clear on this, the decision as to whether to go to a jury again is made by the district attorney of Philadelphia, Lynn Abraham. Would that be the person who would make the decision?
Yes, yes, one.
because I think she's already indicated, at least in some of the reports, that she still believes that that she wants a death penalty for him, which would, the only recourse she would have would be to go to a jury. So it's most likely that they will go to a jury, again, to a jury trial over life in prison or the death penalty.
That is absolutely correct, Juan, that if unless they give up, we will have a new jury trial, at least on the issue of a penalty, a death penalty, or life. But again, I need to emphasize that our goal is an entirely new trial. We're pursuing that with great diligence. I've known Mumia since 1986, and the bottom line in all of this is an entirely new trial, an acquittal by a new jury so he can go home to his family. He's written 5 books from death row. I suspect if I can free him, which is what I plan to do, we will see many more books coming from the pen of Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Robert Bryan, I want to thank you for being with us, lead counsel for Mumia Abu-Jamal, speaking to us from San Francisco. There will be protests today in New York and San Francisco around this issue. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, Hoda Kudus, Aramata, Angelique Comet, Jeffrey Hagerman, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Ravi Karen. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks so much for joining us.